And what struck me is that we live in a world that's both cruel and amazing. I mean, you have a tornado, but you also have rain that gives life to plants that give life to us, right? So rain can be a blessing, rain can be a horrible destruction. Today's Parshat VaEra, and we're going to read the commentary of Noam Elimelech, the Elimelech of Lezhinsk, Hasidic Rebbe from the 1700s, 18th century. Particularly the second verse of the Parsha, which is the book of Shmot, Exodus, chapter 6, verse 3. Again, you can look it up on sefaria.org, and also you can look up the Noam Elimelech on Sefaria, and you go to Chassidut, and then you click Noam Elimelech, then you click Sefer Shmot, Parshat VaEra, and it's comment number 3. And this is the comment, and this Rebbe Elimelech's commentary also has translation in the Sefaria, which is nice. So that makes it helpful for people. And the pasuk is VaEra el Avraham, el Yitzchak, el Yaakov, be'el Shaddai, emphasis on that name of God, be'el Shaddai, u'shmi Adonai, lo nodati lahem. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, but I did not make myself known to them by my name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei.
So we pick up the story, the Passover story, and at the end of last week's Parsha, Hashem, God, sends Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, to Parai, to the Pharaoh, and tells him that he should let the Jewish people be free from slavery. And at the end of the Parsha, we see that it didn't work out, that he says, let my people go, the famous expression, and he kicks him out of the palace. He kicks him out. So at the end of last week's Parsha, Moshe complains. He complains to God. He says, you sent me here. You told me what to do. I have a job to do. And not only didn't it work, it made everything worse, seemingly, because now he says not only do they have to do the slave labor, but he's not even giving them materials from which to make the bricks. They have to make the bricks from scratch. So he's fetching. And at the beginning of this week's Parsha, God answers his complaint. And this is one of the most amazing psukim really in the whole Chumash, because he answers him in a very strange, not understandable way at first glance. So again, he says, you sent me here, and now it didn't happen. It even got worse. So what should be the answer? Don't worry, we'll see. You'll see yet. It'll be good. He answers him, I appeared to the patriarchs, to the Avos, under the guise of a particular name, and I didn't appear to them and make myself known to them by this other name. So, of course, what does that have to do with anything? But very briefly, and then we'll get into the Noam Elimelech's interpretation. And by the way, this Parsha contains 7 of the 10 plagues, and it begins the process of redemption from the Egyptian slavery. But he says, what are the 2 names that we're dealing with? Kel Shakai, this word Shin Dalid Yud, and not the 4-letter holiest name of God, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, as we call it, Shem Havayah. I didn't appear. It doesn't mean that they weren't aware of Shem Havayah. It's just that that wasn't the way he was relating to the Avos. But he was relating to the Avos by the name Shin Dalad Yud. Pasha, the simple explanation, which we really should just very briefly
Sure.
explain before we get into the Hasidus. It comes from the word "die," which means enough. It's a name which has to do with a holding back.
Right.
But more importantly, Rashi explains, and we'll just do this quickly because it's important.
Yeah.
Rashi explains that the four-letter name by which he did not make himself known to the forefathers is the name which signifies keeping a promise. Keeping a promise. And the simple explanation is, I did not fulfill my promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, meaning I promised them the land of Israel, and they didn't receive the land of Israel.
Yeah.
He cites examples of that. But to you, you're complaining that I sent you to do a job and it didn't work. Don't worry. I'm going to fulfill my promise that the Jews are going to be free from slavery through you. That will be fulfilled. So that's a holy four-letter name. It means other things as well, but in this context, according to Rashi, it means the fulfillment of a promise. So I held back from fulfilling the promise that I made to your forefathers, but I will fulfill the promise through you.
Future.
That's a simple shot, as we say, simple understanding. But
Yeah.
now we'll go straight ahead into the Noam Elimelech, and we're going to blast off into the stratosphere of mysticism and understand this in a much deeper way. Now I turn it back over to Reb Reuven.
That's right. This commentary, which is kind of goes a little bit into Kabbalah more than usual. I mean, the Hasidim the Rebbes always bring a mix of wisdom and spirituality, at different levels. And this time, Noam Elimelech is going into a bit more of a kind of a sophisticated kind of Kabbalistic cosmology. But
yeah, and the wonderful thing is that it doesn't, by Chassidut, the teachings of the Chassidic masters, what they did was they took these seemingly unfathomable concepts, really spiritual layout, sort of mystical ideas, and they brought it down,
right,
and formatted it in a way where we can utilize it.
That's right. That's right.
In our daily lives with practical lessons emanating from these highfalutin ideas, as they say.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of Hasidus.
That's the beauty of it. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm so drawn to it. It's my friend says, any Torah you're learning, how does it make you a better person? So exactly. We're masters at that. It's not just the speculations about the cosmos, the edges of the cosmos, but how does this make our life experience more meaningful and more full? So exactly. I just want to parenthetically, just occurred to me as you're talking now, looking at the beginning of this parsha, that last week Parshat Shemot means names, and we talked about names as reputations, and that's an interesting, that was an interesting kind of branching off, sideways kind of on what does names mean. It's really the names of the Shvatim, but interestingly that this parsha is Parshat Shemot too, because it starts with the names of God. So last week was the names of the sons of Jacob. This week we're embroiled in names, and this is now the names of God, which is also interesting. Absolutely, and the world, the name Kel Shaddai is one of the more kind of puzzling names. There's an array of names. There's Elohim and Elokim and Ein Sof and Hamakom and the Havaya, Shem Havaya. There's lots of different names. One God, many names. But El Shaddai is one of those names that is open to so much interpretation. I like the Rashi that you brought, but the very, very, very pshat of it, Shaddai means breasts. So it's one of those things where it's a anthropomorphism, meaning it's like a body part. It's basically a woman's breast is Shaddai, and how do you
which that in itself is really fascinating, because in modern Hebrew and also in biblical Hebrew, the word die means it's a limiting name.
Right.
You know, in Hebrew and Israeli say die kvar, enough already. You know,
Yeah.
enough. It's like a
Die,
harsh
die,
name,
yenu,
seemingly.
die, die, yenu.
It would have been enough. It's enough already, but, you know,
Yeah,
enough. But with this, the Shaddayim, what you're the body part that you're referring to is it's like the opposite of that. It's sort of a nurturing, giving
that's right.
part of the body
That's right.
in the woman, for the woman. So this seeming contradiction is also
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
interesting. But I think the key to that mystery we're going to get into
Yep.
in
Yeah,
the Naim Elimelech.
yep. Yeah.
How the limitation can itself be a form of giving.
Exactly. Well, let's jump in then.
Yeah,
So here
yeah,
we go.
yeah.
So Noam Melech. So he starts by quoting obviously the pasuk VaEra v'chule bekel Shaddai b'shmi havaya lo nodati, etc. So again, a reminder. God says, I appear to the forefathers with the name El Shaddai, but not with the Tetragrammaton, the Shem Havaya, four-lettered holiest name. Here we go. ונראה לפרש דאיתא בגמרא, and it's appears from the interpretation in the Gemara, where it says Shaddai she'amar le'olamo dai, as you had said before. Shaddai means the one who says enough or stop to the world. V'lichora yesh lavin ma yotze lanu mizeh. And on his face, we should, we want to know, well, what is this? What does this teach us? She'amar le'olamo dai, that Hashem says enough or stop to the world. And he says, and he answers the question, Shelo yitpashet yoter, that the word should not expand any further. העניין הוא שחז"ל משמיענו הטובה הגדולה שעשה עמנו הבורא יתברך. The point is that the sages are teaching us with this phrase, She'amar le'olamo dai, that God says enough to the world. It is teaching us the great favor, the great goodness, or actually giving, like you said before, that the Creator makes with us. וידוע שנאצל משהו רחוק יותר מהמאציל הוא נתגשם ביותר. As it is known that the receiver of light, the one who receives God's bestowal, the more, or we could say, to make it simple, the creature, that which God creates, משהו רחוק יותר, the more the creature is distant from its creator, מהמאציל, from the one who bestows, הוא נתגשם יותר. It becomes more dense. נתגשם מלשון גשמיות, מלשון material.
So we're starting from pure spirituality. Before the creation of the worlds, before materialism existed, God created the world, right? So before God created the world, is just God. Now there's a world. So how do you get from God to the world? How do you get from spirituality to physicality? So according to the teachings of the Kabbalah and the Hasidus, there was what we call the Shtalshelis Olamos, the chaining down. It was a progression, because just to go, boom, here I am, there you are. So that's too much to handle. That wasn't the way it was done. It was a slow chaining down of events from the most spiritual until we get all the way down to the world of physicality, the world of asiyah, the world of action.
Right, so it becomes less spiritual and less spiritual and less spiritual.
As we chain down.
You could say more dense, more dense, more dense, and more dense.
Right. So the question that the Naim Elimelech is raising, the point he's trying to start off with here, is that where does that end?
Yeah.
right? I mean, if the Ein Lo Davar Sof, that could be like infinite chaining down until you get to even more physical and coarse physicality than what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
But the idea in general is that we're starting from pure spirituality and we're working our way
Right.
through a creative process.
That's right.
God's creative process to end up where we are.
Right. So God doesn't create the world. Poof, there's a world, like with the magic wand, there's a world. But God actually sets a chain of a creative process of events, and gradually it over.
Right.
But he actually uses the term, the Noam Elimelech here. He says mitpashet, olam mitpashet, and he basically means the same thing. He says olam the world is expanding, and that expansion is so there is a tzimtzum. You can think about it. There is a big bang, and then that's a tzimtzum. Something is created from nothing, but then there's an expansion, and I think that's another way to think about it. Gradually, the universe is being created. But his point is, and let's go back to the text. Okay, so
how is that good? He's going to explain now how that's a good thing.
Right. And now he's going to say, and we can see that if God had not said to the world, stop, or to that expansion, that creative process, stop, the world, creation would have continued to expand forever or be created forever. And it would have expanded to the place that what the Kabbalah calls klipot, the shells, and would have been created in a world that he calls nukba de tehom haraba, in the deep abyss of the deep penetrated abyss. I'm going to just translate it that way for now, so we don't have to get to
like a bottomless pit.
A bottomless pit. But what he's basically saying is that, we'll come to that. Let me finish his literal, just translate literally, then we're going to work with his idea. So, in other words, the world did not expand or create, or did not continue that trajectory of creation all the way into this pit where these klipot, these shells. And now that God has stopped the process of creation, said enough, it's a goodness to us. That the klipot, which is even a denser form of matter and of negativity, klipot are considered to be the source of trouble, basically, just put that in context, that much. Now let's stop there. Then he gives us another little idea there, but we can stop here.
Right. So this idea of the shell, the klipot, the shells surrounding spirituality, which prevent us from being more spiritual. So this idea of the holding back of the creative process to a certain extent. So in the Hasidus, this is known that there are different types of klipot. They're more coarse, as you're talking about coarseness. And then there's a type of a translucent shell. That's called klipas noiga, klipat noga. A see-through shell. And those are things in this world, and which I think he's getting to, that even though we live in a coarse materialistic world, we can deal with most of the objects of the physicality, and we can raise it up because we can see through.
Yeah.
We can see through to the spirituality of that thing. But then there are certain things, not too many actually, there are certain things which we just, specifically as Jewish people, we just can't get to the spirituality of it. A piece of ham, just to be, making an obvious thing. we can make 1,000 blessings
Mhm.
on eating a piece of ham. We can't get to the spirituality of it for whatever reasons God decided. But most of the things in this world, when we deal with it properly, it might not be an actual mitzvah,
Mhm.
but it's mutar. It's mutar. It's been released from. We can release it from this. That we can get through the shell.
Release it from the limitation, from the concealing.
From the concealing of the spiritual aspect of that thing. But what the Naim Elimelech is saying, an unbelievable thing. He says, if God would have just let the thing go, keep going, go, there will be nothing in this world that we could do.
Yeah. In other words, we would have been cut off from any connection to spiritual connection or spiritual experience. We would be in complete darkness, complete blindness. We'd be thick in materiality, and there would be no point of contact with the source, with the divine source. So.
I think that sometimes we have to hold back. By holding back, we're actually giving.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we have to really balance the giving and the withdrawal.
Yeah.
It has to be a dance.
Well, you
because
see that.
One way, sometimes.
I'm saying you see that in education with children.
Yeah.
Sometimes by holding something back or by setting limits to a child, you're actually doing them a favor. That's a way of love.
Just giving the kid lollipop after lollipop after lollipop is not necessarily a good thing,
Yeah.
Although the kid sees it that way. But ultimately it may not be. So this idea of when the understanding of training ourselves, what's that balance between giving and also giving of ourselves to a certain extent too, making ourselves available, as opposed to just becoming like a carpet that people walk on, is also similar. So this balance between giving and holding back.
Yeah.
What's that? And God in creating the world was cognizant of this balance. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a journey. It's a hard thing to get right.
Yeah.
Right. And these names, the playing of the names, with these guys, I was more focused on the holding back. But with you, it's going to be, I'm going to be dealing with you in a different way because I have to know who my customer is.
You're focusing on the relational part, how God is, really relating to us like a parent, where limitations are also a show of love. It's going to make sense in that way,
right?
Because there is a naive expectation that God, we say God is love, right? God is Ava, God is love. And why is God not loving us all the time? Why is God not making our lives good all the time, right? And it's not like that. So there's also...
But even more, what you're saying, it is, the holding back is a form of love.
It is a love, even though it doesn't feel to us that way. Right. I see... the angle I was seeing when I first read it is it's about nature, because you can think about it, the God is Ein Sof, starts with eternity, where there's just nothing, everything, and little by little, there's a world, a very complex world becomes created, and then it becomes denser and denser until we have nature. We have the sort of natural biological world that we're living in. And what struck me is that we live in a world that's both cruel and amazing. I mean, you have a tornado, but you also have rain that gives life to plants that give life to us, right? So rain can be a blessing. Rain can be a horrible destruction, right? Life can be, a lot of people come to me and say, I don't believe in God, but I believe in nature. And yeah, you look at nature and you see God in nature. I mean, the simple example is watch a sunset, watch a sunrise. I mean, something in your neshama, the neshama, there's some things there's ways that the neshama connects through its source through our contact with nature. Obviously, when you see a rose, you look at a rose and you go, wow, I mean, this is beauty. But there's also, in nature, there's incredible cruelty. I mean, nature is horrible. I mean, you watch watch some of the National Geographic, wildlife, they're hunting each other. It's like, you can look at nature as, the prey, the prey and the predator, right? I remember taking a walk down Hook Mountain here. It's amazing. Have you been down to the trail there? It's amazing. The river, the Hudson River, is beautiful. And and I remember walking down the Hudson, and I'm basking in this beautiful day, and I'm enjoying nature and the fresh air and my walk and everything. And all of a sudden I hear this squeaks, like an animal squeaking, but it was very high pitched and frequent. So it sounded like an animal in distress, So I'm kind of looking around, and I have to look down at the ground, and on the ground I see a little frog, and there was a little snake just caught it. And you know how snakes could catch an animal, and they suck it in little by little till it goes into the belly. So the snake caught the frog's kind of hind legs, but the front was still out. The frog was in the snake's mouth, and the frog was squeaking, because it was basically being eaten alive, right? And I remember looking at it, and I was going, man, this is like, it ruined my day. And the thought was, should I save who should I save? I mean, should I ruin the snake's breakfast, or should I save the frog, or should I do anything, or just let nature be what it is, right? Nature is cruel. So, but that's our life. Our life is this mix of beauty and cruelness. But imagine if the process had not stopped here, but it became denser and denser and denser. And it wasn't a mix of cruelty and goodness. Imagine that it was just cruelty and darkness and thickness and,
no chance. Right.
And there was no sunrise, sunset. There was no roads to look at. There was no river to walk by. If you follow the logic of creation, because it goes from denser to denser to denser, I think that's what he talks about. Olam menukba detahom ha'aba is this world where it's all klipa. You don't see anything, and that hit me. Like, thank you, Hashem. I'm going to enjoy my sunrise and my sunset, and and the flowers much better now. It's a great favor. So anyway, that's my take home. To appreciate our possibility. Our soul has the possibility to experience, the beauty and the refinement and the connection to Hashem in real, in real time, in real ways. So I think with that we'll end for today.
Food for thought.
And thank you, everybody. Please like and subscribe, and come back next Wednesday. And shalom for now. Ahava, Ayim Ra.